Yeah, thank you again. This is our webinar on waste reduction for a greener future.
So, hi, my name is Phoebe Purcell. I'm a sustainability manager here at Bywaters. And we've got Emmanuel, who's our sustainability executive, and we'll be taking you through our second webinar of the year.
Wow, it's gone so quick, eh? It's gone so quick. So the agenda for this, we're just going to run you through quickly. So we've got quite a few topics, but we've broken them down to 4 main sections. So firstly, why are we producing so much waste as a society? What sort of waste are we producing? So this is going to be not just in general, but a sort of a more specific look at the office areas, your home areas, what you can do in both day-to-day life and at the office as well. How we can reduce the waste. So looking at these areas again, so office, home, how we can reduce the waste. And we've got a lovely guest speaker with us today, Jose, and he'll have his section halfway through. And we've got some seasonal links to Christmas time and the Christmas period, looking through all the waste produced over this month and how we can sort of look to reduce that as a society. So yeah, that's the agenda for today.
Amazing. So first off, we'll talk about what waste we produce. Starting off with the offices. So offices are responsible for generating, a significant amount of waste each year. And so understanding the amount and type of waste your company produces is an integral part of the waste management process. So according to a study we have here, the average office worker generates about 2 kilos of waste a day. So some of that waste can consist of the list we have here. So, paper, cardboard. Take, for example, paper. So even though maybe your workplace has become more digitalized over the time, businesses are still producing a large amount of office waste paper. And again, a study from Xerox found that nearly half of all documents are thrown away within 24 hours. And up to 30% are never picked up at all. So there's still a bit of work to do there. Other types of waste that we have, so we've got here WE and printer toners. So WE is our electrical waste. So globally, less than 1/5 of e-waste is recycled. This is a tricky material to recycle, and we send our waste to our specialists, our preferred partners. So as a company, it's up to you guys to have that legal responsibility to ensure that all your waste is stored, managed, and disposed of by the regulations. Another one just to pick out from this list, compostable waste. So again, we talked about this in our last webinar 2 months ago. They are a slightly newer product, but we are seeing more and more of them. So again, if your office has that type of waste, you need to make sure you've got the right setup for it. So for us, compostable waste, it can't go in your food bin, it can't go in the dry mix recycling. It does have to go into a specific compostable waste stream. If not, then unfortunately it will end up in your general waste. So also household waste. We generate a hell of a lot in our homes. Another stat here, British households create over 26 million tons of waste annually. So the types of waste we're going to be seeing here is, yes, of course, our cardboard, our different types of plastic, but also, a lot of food waste. So again, make sure you reach out to your local councils to see if they offer that waste stream. Make sure you have that caddy at home. And also what would be slightly different here is maybe we're seeing a lot more green waste. If you guys have gardens, things like that, any grass, plant cuttings, things like that. So there's a lot of waste produced in both the office and household.
Thank you, Phoebe. That was a lot of information there. So hopefully everyone's taken that all in. And we're going to use that information to sort of think, how can we reduce our waste in these areas? So firstly, changing habits. We want everyone to sort of work on themselves. If everyone does a little change, it can make a big difference when everyone does it together. So you might think, oh, if I make a change, it's not going to make a difference overall. I'm only one person, I can only do so much. But you have to think, if every single person does that 1% difference, it really does add up. So in the office, what can we do? Firstly, we'd love everyone to be using reusable items instead of single-use items. You know, if you have your reusable mugs, reusable cutlery, crockery, all of that is key. We don't want to be constantly ordering new single-use plastic cups, containers, mugs, bowls, you name it. We don't want to be doing that all the time. And actually, there are some other benefits as well, other than just reducing waste. Economical benefits. If you do have equipment that you can rely on for the long term, you can stop paying to keep ordering in new shipments. That adds up over a long time as well. So also in the office, we want to be reducing the number of non-recyclable materials. So having a look at your procurement lists and having a think, what do we actually need from here? So me personally, I've actually worked with a few of our sites, and I've gone over and we've sort of done like a case study, but we've looked through their procurement lists and picked out things that maybe could be tweaked, maybe could be changed. Do you really need this? You know, a good example is wooden stirrers. Do you really need wooden stirrers in the office? I mean, they do the same job as a spoon, and then you can wash a spoon and you don't have to pay anything for it once you've got it, right? So it's looking at these small little things that maybe you don't need in the office. So again, if you've got lots of sugar and coffee at your tea points, instead of having small individual packets where you have to rip open the packet, pour it in, and then throw away that packet, if you just buy the bigger ones in bulk and have them in like glass containers or something like that, it reduces the amount of packaging waste, firstly. And secondly, it reduces the chance of contamination in the wrong waste streams. So you can imagine not everybody who's using those single-use sugar packets is going to put it in the correct waste stream. So if they put that in the food waste stream, for example, that's going to be at risk of contamination and all things like that. So again, just having a quick look through and picking out the key points. Moving on to centralized bin points over under desk bins. So this is something that we always see and we always try to move towards. If you have a centralized bin point in your office, in your kitchens, in your tea points, wherever they may be, they are the best. They are the best rather than having under desk bins. It gives everyone the chance to actually separate all their materials, and then we can actually recycle the most that we can recycle. You can imagine if you had an under desk bin, I've just gone out, I've gone and got my meal deal, I've got my banana skin, I'm going to be putting it in the same bin as my plastic water bottle, which can be recycled, and my crisp packet, which should be going in general waste. That right there is 3 different waste streams all going into one, which would lead that bag to being going as general waste. So yes, just be careful with what you're doing. And moving on to home, a lot of these things are quite similar to the home. Just make sure you're looking at what you're doing. And some other things additionally is reducing your buying deliveries, reducing frequent buying or deliveries. So if you are ordering lots of things online, you want to be trying to cut back on ordering lots at different times and just try and order them once or in bulk or something like that. That can really help cut down on deliveries. And again, greenhouse gases, if you're shipping it long distances, things like that, we always want to take into consideration. Weekly shopping instead of daily. So if you're going to your Tesco, going to your Asda, you're going to pick up the weekly shop. Instead of going every day and picking up small bits here and there, try and do it in a weekly shop. Have a list, write down your things that you actually need. That actually is one of the tips that I'll give you. If you write down a list, you're actually more likely to stick to that list and not buy unnecessary things.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely fall for that. I need a list, because if I don't have a list, I'll go off topic.
And it saves money.
It does save money as well. So that's another benefit. And yeah, before we move on to Jose, just have a little line there, using alternatives to fast fashion. So buying secondhand clothing from stores or online. There's lots of websites or apps available. So I personally use Vinted and Depop. You can sell your old stuff, buy new things as well. So that definitely is something that I would personally look into if you haven't already heard about it. But yeah, like I mentioned, moving on.
Amazing. Yeah. So moving on, thanks, Emmanuel. Moving on to our guest speaker, Jose Baladron.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, we'll just mute ourselves and it's over to you, Jose.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Phoebe. So first of all, thank you to Bywaters to allow me to speak today to you about the problems with the fashion industry and textile waste. and the small actions that we can all do on a daily basis to try to mitigate and tackle this issue. So I would like to start by asking you to reflect on your own relationship with the clothing. As most of us love clothes and fashion, and even for those who are completely indifferent to style and trends, they still have to wear and buy the clothes that they're going to get on a daily basis. And the clothes that we choose to buy and wear, in a way, it shapes our identity, placing us in a certain tribe, group, or culture, bracket, age, and so on. And it helps us to be more put together when we try to be more professional or more quirky. So the take point here is basically that we all have a relationship with our clothing, and that relationship is vital in our lives. Please, next slide. As you can see in the first picture, the fashion industry is a complex beast. Every day we are bombarded with images of beautiful people wearing beautiful looking clothes, and we can find that in the mainstream press, magazines, online, and whenever we walk down the high street. The fashion industry works extremely hard to sell their product to us, and whenever by the time that we start having a relationship with the clothing, by the time we see those clothing, usually the point of purchase, this clothing has already been grown, spun, dyed, sewn, cut, packaged, transported, etc. The long and complex supply chains making our clothes are usually hidden behind the glamorous face of the marketing, advertising, and visual merchandising. So you can see some of the stats there for the global fashion industry these days. It's valuing around $3 trillion. 70 to 75 million people are employed in the textile industry worldwide. To compare that with just 20 years ago, is 50 to 55 million people more working in the industry than back then. And it's estimated 162 billion of items are delivered worldwide out of factories last year, which is a rise on 80 billion from 10 years ago. So clearly it's not stopping. We carry on producing and consuming a lot more. Please, next slide. So now I want to delve a little bit into the cost of this fashion industry, being social or being environmental. And the first thought I want to put out is a sentence from a Cambodian garment worker in 2019. I just want to earn enough to feed my family, have a roof over us, and live in dignity. This is a very defining feature of the fashion industry. Globally, as I said, the sector employs millions of workers, with the majority are women. And in fast fashion, and especially fast fashion in particular, relies on the abundance of cheap, male and skilled, and offer disempowered labor to make our clothing. The wages that they're getting paid is ridiculous. The amount of hours that they're working on the factories are ridiculous. And some of these social costs that our clothing got on it, sometimes they are never making public, or the public is not really aware of this cost. So I thought it was quite important to mention this particular social cost. Next slide, please. Now the impact on the environment. The fashion industry has the fourth largest environmental impact after transport, housing, and food. The total greenhouse emissions from textile production are 1.2 billion tons per annum, which is more than international flights and maritime shipping combined. Globally, the fashion industry is estimated to use 79 billion cubic meters of water every year, and that's set to rise in 50% extra in the next 6-7 years by 2030. One cotton t-shirt, as an example, takes about 2,000 to 2,500 liters of water to be produced, something that will take us to drink about 6 years on our adult life. So clearly, when we think about the number of t-shirts that were produced on a daily basis, and now we know the amount of water that it takes to be produced, it really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? In which way we have to behave and consume and wear and make our right choices when we buy clothing or purchase clothing. What it means there's a globalized industry? Well, it's not only globalized, it's hyper-globalized. That means that, for example, I don't want to say any retailer name, but anyone you want to think about, Primark, Gap, Zara, whichever. A t-shirt from them can see its cotton be grown in Africa, then it's been sent to China or India to be combed, twisted, and spun into yarn. Then it's sent to Bangladesh, where it will go into woven of fabric, and then it's sent to maybe Turkey for the factory to be cut, sewn, and packaged. Then it's transported to the UK to be sold by retailers in our high streets. So globalization gives the brands and retailers huge ability, huge mobility, and the garment industry is always on the move. But also it means there is quite a lack of transparency in the sector. Supply chains are quite opaque and difficult to really regulate. Next slide, please. Production and consumption. Well, the main thing here is the engine driving the textile industry is consumption. That's pretty clear. And so you can see that the clothes production more than doubled between 2005 2019. I mentioned 2019 because of first pre-pandemic, so big stats coming from there. In UK alone, between 2012 and 2019, consumption increased by 220,000 of tons of clothing. That you can translate into garments in about over 1.5 billion garments, really. And the number of garments produced globally today has exceeded 100 billion. And I want to make a note in here. We know that the retailers or producers of clothing only sell 60 to 62% of the clothing that they produce. So we are clearly overproducing clothing, overusing natural resources like previously mentioned, like water and so on. So it's something that really the retailers need to keep an eye on and produce in a more rational manner. So also the options that we have in our shops will be according to that, and not having like 50 or 55 collections per year going to our high street stores, which clearly is not sustainable. Please, next slide. Now in UK alone, after all the consumption that we just mentioned, we send to landfill over 300,000 tons of clothing. We estimate that 40 to 42% of that clothing is in wearable condition, not just recyclable, wearable condition. And we believe that will be a value in the market of about 140 to 150 million pounds. So why that happens? Well, we were close on average about 7 times before we discard them. It's estimated that the younger generations, or Gen Z in UK, throw away 35 million items of clothing to the bin, not to the recycling bins, not to reusing or charity shops, or vintage, like previously Emmanuel mentioned. No, they go into the bin. And when we did a study early this year with Textiles 2030, we find out that in London, 26% of the clothing that we own hasn't been worn in the last 12 to 15 months, which is very unlikely then that's going to be worn again. That's about 123 to 125 million of garments that are sitting in our wardrobes and cupboards. That obviously the best option to pass on, clean and sustainable. And what I mentioned before about the relationship with the clothing, of course, there are some garments that we got attachment to, could be a present from a loved one, a family, a friend, could be something we inherited, and we have some kind of a special feeling or attachment to it. But the majority of them is something that we just purchased, but wore it once and not wear it again. So we encourage all of you to look at your wardrobes and see in that stat, 26% really matches with the study that we did. I can tell you it was a survey of 3,000 people in London. Please, next slide. So now, TRAID, that's who I am. I'm the head of partnerships of TRAID. TRAID is a charity working to stop clothing to be thrown away or into landfill, because we turn clothes waste into funds and resources to reduce the environmental and social impact of our clothes. So our main focus, as I said before, is to try to create awareness of the fashion and the textile industry issues and try to mitigate those impacts with our actions, which, can I have the next slide, please? Which you can see there, our main thing is to collect clothing. We collect clothing in many different ways. The most popular or the biggest way of collection is the textile banks that you can see in the picture, bring banks that you can play on the highways or private and public land, people can have freely use, and our home collection service, which is a bespoke service in which the donor can book a slot day and time for our driver to go to their household and collect directly from their door. Very convenient way of donating. Next slide, please. We collect about 3,100 tons of clothing per year, and all of it goes to our warehouse where we hand sort every single garment that we collect. The purpose of this is to maximize the reuse, resell, and recycling ratios. And of course, you might wonder what happened with the clothing or the garments that are so damaged that cannot be recycled, cannot be worn. So unfortunately, those garments has to go to incineration and create energy from waste, which is not ideal, but at least we are producing something creating electricity, but again, our main aim to be completely zero waste and nothing has to go to incineration at all. So based on that sorting that I just mentioned, we tag and price around 31,000 garments on a weekly basis that goes to our charity shops. We got 12 shops in London, and then we open different pop-ups shops across the country on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So what are the outcomes after we have said what TRAID does, what we do with the clothing, what we want to encourage any particular, any individual to do? Well, extending the product lifetime as the first preference when it comes to improve clothing sustainability. By extending the life of a garment just 6 to 9 months, we can reduce our carbon or our footprint, water and waste footprints by 20 to 30%. For every ton of clothing which is directly reused through charity shops, be in TRAID, be any other, second-hand, again, it's been mentioned eBay, Vinted, and so on, we can save 8.8 tons of carbon emissions per ton collected. And also the financial cost. The cost of landfilling this clothing in UK is around £85 million per year, which is really a waste. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? We partnered with Bywaters about 18, 19 months ago, I believe. It's been a fantastic partnership so far in which Bywaters is helping TRAID to expand the network of collection points through their customers. So we got cardboard bank donation bins in offices, in buildings, and also textile banks in some buildings across the city and across London, in which the employees and the staff can donate their unwanted clothes into those bins. TRAID collect from those bins and go through the process I just previously mentioned. So since the partnership started, we collect 4,369 kilos of clothes and shoes, which is amazing. And that helped us to reduce 35.3 tons of CO2 emissions and over 6,600 cubic meters of water. At the same time, we also deliver some kind of education and awareness with our workshops, could be clothes repair workshops or upcycling clothing workshops that we use the material collected from those donations points in Bywaters customers' premises, which is a fantastic initiative and completely close the loop and the circle about what we do, which is using the garments that are not reusable at all and use them, for example, to fill a draft excluder, make or discarded denim. Next slide, please. And then the question, the main thing, our main ethos, why we're here, not only for environmental and social aspects, but also for our international development funding. So all the income that we raise in our charity shops by reselling those goods donated or collected from us help us to fund international development projects. Our main focus is the childcare for the garment workers. So in the picture you can see there is from the Nagoric Center in Dhaka, Bangladesh, which we build 3 childcare centers to avoid child labor. One of the main problems is that the garment workers, due to the long shifts, as previously mentioned, need to take their kids to the workplace. So the children at a very young age, they start collaborating on working on those premises, not getting paid and getting a bit exploited. So by creating these childcare centers, thanks to the donation and income that we raise, we are able to provide them education, meals, and also healthcare. Something that I want to mention before I finish today is in Bangladesh, you are not entitled to education or healthcare if you don't have a birth certificate. The birth certificate costs £43, which is slightly higher than the monthly income of these garment workers, so they cannot really afford to have that. So we have child centers built and funded by TRAID, and we not only provide education, as I mentioned, and the meals, but we also provide them with birth certificates, so they're entitled to simple things like seeing the doctor when they feel ill. Next slide. And this slide shows you the Benin and Ethiopia organic cotton growers and farmers. It's one of the biggest projects that we launched 19 years ago. At the beginning was only, I think it was 2% of the farmers started. Now almost 75 to 20% of the farmers are within this project. They are growing in an organic manner, as I said, reducing the amount of water, reducing the amount of pesticides used, no pesticides whatsoever, which was one of the main reasons of death in the farmers in those countries 10 years ago. So again, another issue in the environmental aspect, which is avoiding pesticides and growing organic cotton that we produce and be used to produce our clothing. Next slide. And I want to leave you with this sentence from James Laver, which means clothes are never a frivolity. They always mean something. As I said before, It's up to each of us which way of meaning we want to give to our clothing and everything that we do on a daily basis. But I think it's a fantastic sentence and a statement of what we just said. And with this, I just finished. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jose. Wow. It was crazy to think that even, from when you mentioned the amount of clothing delivered worldwide, the rise from 80 billion from 2012 to 2020, such a big rise considering
it is. Especially
all our growing concerns with climate change,
exactly.
Depletions of our resources, and we're still buying a load of stuff.
We do. We're not asking people to stop buying clothing. We don't want that.
No.
But we want people to be more rational in the way that they buy clothing, to be maybe more aware of what is behind a garment. Why is the garment so cheap or not so cheap? Where it comes from? Who made the clothes? Where is the supply chain, if possible? And as you know, now European legislation is discussing to introduce a QR tag on every garment brand new produced that has to start mentioning when it was produced, who made it, what is the composition, how many washes can that garment cope with. And that gave us a lot of information to make a more sustainable or rational choice.
Wow. Great. Okay. So any questions, guys, for Jose? We've got another section of questions at the end, but
feel free to jump in now if you've got anything burning that you really want to ask Jose. You can come off mute or write it in the chat. Either one's fine. We'll just wait here.
I have a question.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Jose. If I'm correct, thank you for your advocacy and the stoppage of child labor, providing birth certificates and meal for people in a difficult situation. My question is, you have helped reduce this waste by saving about 35.3 tons, then 6,646 meter cube of water for these clothings, giving them a lifespan of about 9 months. Now, if by actual calculation, let's say, for example, these clothes are like 100,000 pieces, and you extend their lifespan for 9 months, when they are done using this clothing, they return them back. What are you going to do to this clothing again? Are they going back to landfill, or you still have to recycle them again? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Very, very, very valid question. Absolutely not. The main idea is obviously when we encourage people to wear the clothing for an extra 6 to 9 months, as you just rightly said, and we mentioned, it reduces our carbon footprint in 20%. Then when you pass them on again, what TRAID in particular would do is when hand sort them anyway, see if it's still usable, wearable, reusable. If it is, it's going to go to be sold in our charity shops. Maybe, as you said, the condition is already not good enough, but we do what we call our sale, in which everything goes for £1. So we give the options to anybody, any demographics, any disposable income, to be able to buy clothing. If the garment is already so damaged that cannot be wearable or reusable, then we are in partnership with different universities in UK. Something I have to mention before I carry on. Textile recycling as such, which is dismantle a piece of garment into yarn to make something new, is in a very early stages in UK. There's a lot of projects and funding going on to explore possibilities about recycling the clothing. So what we do as TRAID is we use this clothing to supply these projects in universities so they can practice and test technology and machinery on them. We also send a few loads per quarter to Holland in Rotterdam, which a company now is able to mix composition of fibers being converted into yarn and then create something new out of it. Is again, is early stages. We also use them for our upcycling and repair clothing workshops by cutting them, patching them, using them for filling for draft excluders. And it also goes what they call the wiper industry in UK, which is mostly used to factory cloth, to clean machinery, to be used for insulation of buildings fiber, to be used for filling car seats and so on. But it's still a lot of work to do, not only in UK, also in Europe, but as the main routes after sorting and being very damaged, that's where they end up.
Perfect. Thanks, Jose. We've got a few other questions in the chat as well, so I'm just going to read them out for you. So firstly, do you collect from local recycling centres as well?
Yes, we work with local authorities in partnership. Currently in London, we got 19 local authorities working in contract with us. Some of them got recycling centres where we have textile banks from ourselves. So the resident, when they do the drop-in, can drop their furniture or any other waste, and then in the textile bank, put the clothing, the textiles, and the shoes. Not every recycling centre got a textile collection, something that we are working with the London councils to address. But the ones that work with us, they have a textile bank service in the recycling centres, yes.
Perfect. So Rodrigo's put this in the chat. It's a bit of a longer one, so I'm going to read the whole thing out at once. And if you need me to go back to the question, I can. So Rodrigo said, when looking at reducing consumption and increasing behaviour change, has TRAID looked at engaging with schools to nurture future generations, ensuring that fast fashion culture is addressed and explained? And also, this the same process can apply to universities. And then Rodrigo goes on to say, it is great to focus on the end product and make the most of it once it has been, once it was deemed for disposal by the first owner. Increasing the lifetime of the items is great, but more can be done when changing mindsets before items are procured in the first place. And I completely agree with what Rodrigo just said there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to answer the first question about education, yes, TRAID used to have education department that was focused on the younger generations, primary, secondary schools, and universities. Unfortunately, since pandemic, that department has to be made redundant, and the duties fall on my department. So I'm visiting several schools in London, mostly, in which I go do a small presentation according to the age of the students, in which I basically explain to them what are the issues and the story of the clothing, how the clothing is made, how the clothing reach our shops, what happened with the clothing after we don't want them no more. I completely agree with Rodrigo that it's key that the young generations are aware of the problems. They got the key to fix it in the short term and the mid-term future. We also speak with the London School of Fashion, the Retail Fashion Academy, and these young designers and retailers, in which I mentioned to them that they are also key on the designing process. To me, every garment should be now, when in the designing time, should be keep in mind the end of life. What happened, I don't know, for example, a coat. When the coat ends the end of life, cannot be used as a coat anymore. How easy it is to convert it into something else? Does it have metal pieces? Does it have zips? It's been thought about how easy it could be done into, I don't know, into a shopping bag or into a travel bag. So designing is key. The composition of the materials that you now use is key, because it will tell us how easy it will be to recycle in future. So yeah, education, awareness, not only in the children in the schools, but also in the people involved in the textile industry is something that we do, and we encourage everybody to do. Sorry, the second part of the question was I lost the second part of the question. Apologies.
Sorry, I think that was it. The second part wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement. Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. But one last bit as well. So Alex, I've seen you mentioned in the chat, if we can arrange to actually have something like this on your site, that's definitely something we can do. I'll just reach out to you after the webinar. I'll send you an email and we can definitely look to get that involved.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. Yes. So we're going to move on with the slides now. Thank you so much, Jose.
Thank you
for doing your bit. We're going to carry on. We've got a few little bits left, only a few more slides, but it's going to be a bit more of a seasonal thing, more about Christmas time. And we're going to start it off with some stats to do with Christmas. So I was looking online and I was thinking, how much of a difference is the waste produced around the Christmas period to the rest of the year? So it's not great viewing, but the waste generated at Christmas goes up by about 30% compared to the waste created during the rest of the year. And you can imagine that's due to all the gifts, that's due to all the food, everyone's getting together. It's a bit of everything. Everyone's doing stuff during this period, so there's always going to be more waste. So it's about what can we do as individuals and also as communities together to actually sort of bring that number down. So some other stats as well. around 66% of people admit to buying too much Christmas food, which ends up into the bin. And that equates to about over 230,000 tons a year. So you can imagine food waste. We don't want to be having a lot of food waste. There's a lot of greenhouse gases involved in the whole production and the whole supply chain with this. We want to reduce that. So if you are buying food, if you are inviting people around your house, sort of check up on them, make sure that they're coming, and make sure you're sort of cooking the right amount of food. We don't want to be having excess food that we can't use or give out, anything like that. And in the festive season alone, around 125,000 tons of food wrapping is discarded. So that's from advent calendar trays, candy wrappers, gift boxes, just from everyday items that you might be buying at the supermarket that you're making. So think about all of the individually wrapped items that you're buying, all of that packaging, 125,000 tons. And moving on, 300 million plastic cups and straws will be used. So that is not good. That's not good. We don't really like that too much. We sort of, again, if you're having something at your home, look to use your reusable items, look to use your mugs, look to use your glasses, things like that. If you do have straws and you want to have straws, there are metal straws that you can reuse. I mean, I know they're a bit of a more expensive one-off purchase, but once you have them for life. So it's looking at small things that we can change. The packaging for toys and gifts is discarded approximately 100 million black bags every year. So that's quite a terrible stat there. 100 million black bags every year. We actually at Bywaters don't like black bags, and that's for multiple reasons. Firstly, if we're on site and we're in the office, the cleaning crew will be picking up these black bags, but they have no idea what's inside. It could be sharp objects, it could be glass, it could be whatever it may be. They might hurt themselves. So for health and safety reasons, we don't advise black bags. We actually advise more transparent bags. So you can get these in different colors if you really want to be fancy about it, but just transparent bags in general are great. And again, the second reason is when it comes to our facility, if we do have lots of black bags, we can't actually visually inspect what's inside without ripping open the bag. And again, that can be a health and safety problem. So we just prefer everyone to sort of have transparent bags if possible. So if you are using black bags over Christmas or just in general in your home life or in the office, please consider making the switch to transparent bags. And lastly, our last stat, on Christmas Day, about 40 million Christmas crackers are anticipated to be thrown away. So this tradition here, it's a great tradition. Everyone loves it. You know, we all love popping the Christmas crackers and wearing the crown, telling the joke. But once you've had your 5 minutes of fun, that's it. It just goes.
Is it getting recycled?
Is it getting recycled?
General waste?
Who knows? Who knows? It's a lot of waste for 5 minutes of fun. So again, consider everything.
Awesome. Great. So here's finally just some tips on reducing waste. We don't want to get all grinchy about it. It's a merry time. We're all happy. But as Emmanuel said, you know, the waste generated at Christmas, it goes up by 30%. So what can we do? How can we help with this stat? So Emmanuel already mentioned, but shopping, make a list, you know, make sure you know how many people you're kindly cooking for. You know, it's a big deal, but make sure they all turn up. You've got the right heads, so you know how many pigs and blankets to make, that sort of thing. Could we potentially look at a plant-based alternative? You know, do we need to have a ham, a turkey, and beef joint? For example, beef produces the most CO2 per kilo out of any meat. Could we maybe swap out that beef rib for a plant-based meal? Something to think about. Donating excess food to charity. So as well as our amazing work with TRAID, we also work with Olio. Olio is a food sharing app that works with companies and local people in the London area. And Olio can help with excess food waste, so it gets collected and volunteers distribute that, around the local community. So, you know, that's something we could look at. Donate unwanted gifts, as Jose's just been talking about, you know, the amount of clothing that us Londoners don't wear. You know, if you did get that scarf from, you know, your great Aunt Sally that isn't your colour, don't keep it in the wardrobe for a couple of months or years, donate it, find your local trade bank, clothing bank, you know, let's share, let's give it to TRAID.
Even give it to a friend.
Yeah.
Sure I could use a scarf. I don't have one, so
Exactly,
there
yeah,
you go.
there you go, pink's a colour.
Yeah.
Cut back on wrapping materials. So again, wrapping paper, Emmanuel will talk about the scrunch text in a minute, but you know, paper wrapping paper compared to lots of glitter, lots of plasticky wrapping paper, it's not as good. You know, could we try reusable cotton wrapping paper? Does it need to be wrapped? Could it just be given?
Yeah.
And then lastly, do we need all these materialistic gifts? You know, maybe look at experience gifts, a gift, a membership to a friend, you know, National Trust, the Woodland Trust, things like that. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Phoebe. So moving on, we've spoken about all the different types of materials. We know that everyone's going to be busy cooking and things like that, and everyone's going to be receiving gifts. But once you've got that waste in front of you, how do you know? How can you check if this is recyclable or not? So we've got 2 tips for you here. The first is the scrunch test. If you grab that material in your hand and you scrunch it up into a ball and you release, does the material A stay scrunched up in your hand, or B, does it open back up and expand? So if it does open back up and expand, like a crisp packet or something like that, then it means it's general waste. So that normally means that the material is a composite material. It's got more than one material in there. It's quite a rigid structure. And it means that it won't actually be able to efficiently be recycled unless it gets sent to a specialist facility. So at our facility, we wouldn't be able to take anything like crisp packets or coffee cups or anything like that. It would have to be plain materials, PET, the materials like that we can actually accept at our facility. And one of the other tests as well is the tip test. So if you've been cooking in the kitchen, you've got a yogurt pot, for example, and you don't know if this is clean enough to go in the dry mix recycling. One thing that we can say, we don't recommend that everyone does this, but one thing you can say is to do the tip test. So if you feel comfortable and you think, oh, you know what, nothing's going to spill if I put this on my head right now, then it's okay to go in the dry mix recycling. If you think, oh, you know what, if I put this underneath, well, on top of my head, everything's going to fall out, my hair's going to be ruined, then it probably means give it a quick rinse. It doesn't need to be scrubbed clean or anything like that. Just a quick rinse and then just pat it dry. And that can go into the dry mix recycling. And again, one last thing as well, on wrapping papers, you can get different types of wrapping papers over the Christmas period. You'll see quite a lot of them. So you can get the just paper ones, which when you scrunch up will actually stay scrunched. And if you have other ones infused with like a silicone lining or a plastic lining, these ones will actually come back up and they'll expand back out. So they actually can't be put into the dry mix recycling. So yeah, any questions?
Any questions for us? Do we have anything in the chat? Be good to see Bywaters Murph.
Yep, we can arrange a Murph visit if that's something that you'd like to see. You can grab our emails if you don't have them already, and we'll definitely arrange that.
We've got a hand up. Tell us a little about Bywaters. Okay, great. So yeah, Bywaters, we're a family-run waste company. We're based in East London, Bromley by Bow. And we work with 3,000 customers within London. So our proximity of where we work is within the M25. And the types of businesses we would work with, there's a whole range. So from hospitals to offices to schools and universities. So we do work with a big range of waste. And what's great about us is we actually have our MRF on site. So MRF means your material recovery facility. So that's essentially where all your recycling that we collect, we take it back to our facility and we sort it out. We put it to bales of PET, HDP, LDP, all these different types of plastics, cardboards, aluminium, glass, and then
that'll be different fineries of glass as well. We can just all go through as one. So again, if you've got something that's under 2 millimeters, I'll get put into a different section to something that's obviously bigger chunks.
And send it on to reprocessors. Yes. And the idea about this is obviously we want to keep these resources in the
local as
environment.
possible.
Yeah.
As local as possible. We don't want to be shipping out all of our things to end destinations all across the world. Again, greenhouse gas emissions, things like that, we always want to consider. We always look for the best local solution. if
Exactly.
possible.
And if clients are interested in seeing our end destinations, this is, of course, something we can disclose with you guys. Rodrigo, you've got your hand up.
I think I might have noticed, was that up earlier as well, or is that a new?
Sorry guys, yeah, that was at the beginning of the presentation when Jose was speaking. Muchas gracias, by the way, Jose. Nice one.
Lovely, thank you. And again, I've just seen your tip again here, so I'll just read that out if everyone hasn't seen that already. But wrapping, they use Metro or any other old newspapers during Christmas, so the presents might not look as appealing, but they're given with much love. And that's actually
that's true.
That's a great thing to say, because you can imagine every day on the tube when I come into work, how many of those Metros do I see that are just left scattered around, waiting to be picked up and thrown away, right? So
kids just rip them open anyway. That's what I do.
yeah, that's
I'm joking. Great. Any other questions, guys? Okay, maybe we'll leave it at that. But again, thanks so much, everyone, for attending our second webinar.
We've got Tanya, thank you for your question. We've got, what about your food waste? Do you have your own anaerobic digestion plant? We don't have our own anaerobic digestion plant. We work with biocollectors or refood. So again, we'd look at who works best for specific sites or areas or locations, and we work with them to redistribute the food to their anaerobic digestion. We've actually done quite a few tours at their site, having a look at the process there, and they really go in depth and they really tell you everything you need to know. And it's, if you're ever available to go down, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, we can of course organise a tour to see the anaerobic digestion process in Wimbledon. A big round of applause to Jose. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose.
Oh, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. I really have fun. So thank you very much. Very interesting tips you put out there, to be honest. So lovely. Thank you.
And again, we'll continue, spreading TRAID's news and kind of offering it to our clients. So as Jose mentioned, we've got a number of clients currently using TRAID. So let's kind of increase that. And
definitely increase that number.
it.
Alex, I will reach out to you after this meeting and I'll send you an email and we'll definitely get that sorted.
Yes.
Jose will be your point of contact as well. So you've already met basically.
Yeah.
So there you go, even better. So we'll get that sorted out definitely for sure. And if anyone else does want to have a TRAID bank installed, or even the cardboard banks, a workshop, anything like that, you can either reach out through us or directly to Jose here as well. That's either's fine. We're just happy to get more involved and bring everyone together.
Yeah.
And be a part of this.
Amazing. And everyone have a great Christmas.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Less is more. Less is more.